Hi, everyone. Welcome. Everybody comfortable? Yeah? You can always get up and get another drink if you want to. This is supposed to be casual, all right? It's supposed to be the anti-panel. So I'm Dave Morehouse. I'm the director of the Institute for Research and Sensing, which is a brand new interdisciplinary research institute here at the University of Cincinnati. But this is really a group project, a group of 9 of us that have been working together over the past 2 years to launch this. And there's a lot of things that we're doing. We have a graduate program, training program at IRiS that launched this fall. 16 PhD students, 9 departments, 3 different colleges. Some of them are here. If you're an IRiS graduate research fellow, can you raise your hand real quick? This is the graduate research fellow section. They're doing fantastic work, learning about innovation in sensing and working with external partners. We have external partners that include the EPA, NIOSH, Kroger, and Procter Gamble, all working with small interdisciplinary student teams with challenges that their industry is facing, and the student teams are working to develop innovative solutions to that. So that's part of what we're doing. We're also doing a lot of academic or research-focused work, day-long retreats, and a working group. Peter Langland-Hassan is here today, is leading a working group on AI and machine learning and kind of new frontiers in that. That will occur in April. But you're here for one of the main things we're doing this first year, which is the Alloy series. It's a discussion series. It's meant to bring people together from really diverse perspectives. Maybe haven't even met each other yet. I bet that some of our panelists have never met each other. All right. The idea is to create collisions between perspectives, to throw sparks, to think about ideas, to be surprised by new perspectives. Nobody here is representing the state of the art in their field or some consensus view. They're representing themselves and what they think about when they think about these topics. So it's meant to be off the cuff. And we're doing 8 of these each year for at least the next 3 years. We're trying to set them in strange and unusual and inspiring places around town. So this is a pretty good start, yeah? The November one will be at the Lunken Airport Terminal. All right, closed to the public for the past 2 years. We'll be able to have drinks in the Greater Cincinnati Airmen's Club inside the Lunken Airport Terminal before we go out to the Art Deco lobby and have a conversation like this. The December one will be at the Swing House here in Camp Washington, an Italianate row house with a swing attached to the rafters. You can swing the length of the building. Pretty cool. You'll be able to swing, at least before we set up chairs and have our conversation. We'll do one at the Cincinnati Observatory in January, and we're out prospecting for other really strange and unusual and fun places around town, like places that you can't usually get to. That's the whole point. So it's meant to stimulate curiosity while we're having conversations about current topics in sensing and perception. So if you're not on our mailing list yet, just come up to me at the end, and I'll make sure that you get on our mailing list so you get notices about this. They're all free. And so I think that's all that I have to say about IRiS at the moment, but I did want to quickly introduce our conversationalists, for lack of a better word. I like raconteurs, but I don't know if that's what you really all are. Let's start with Peter Langland-Hassan here. Hi, Peter. Peter is going to be moderating and a voice in this. Peter's in the Department of Philosophy. He studies philosophy of mind and cognition, thinking about inner speech, inner voice, amongst other things. He'll bring an interesting perspective tonight. Tony Chemero, right here. Tony is in both philosophy and psychology. He thinks about embodied cognition, about the ways in which the way we make sense of the world isn't just in our minds, but also lives out to our bodies and the bodies of other things. We just wrote a paper together about animals and how they make sense of the world. So Tony, very flexible thinker, thinking about embodied cognition. Yeah, with Olivia Harris, who's in the audience here today. Tamara Lorenz, another multi-department person, psychology, mechanical engineering, and electrical engineering and computer science. She's really interested in interactions between people and machines, or people and robots, and how synergies arise there. And so she's, the kind of machine-robot interface. So yeah, she'll bring some really exciting ideas and perspectives here. Maura O'Connor who's in history, and you're also in women's gender and sexuality studies, yeah? Yeah. And just like incredibly interdisciplinary, so a historian, but also interested in economics and neuroscience, and you're a wild card. I have no idea what you're going to share with us today, and I'm excited to hear your perspectives. That's okay. Just let the spirit move. And last but not least is Joori Suh. She's in DAP. She's in architecture and interior design. She thinks a lot about how humans interact with space and in a sensory way, kind of visuospatial interactions, multimodality. How does space impact the way that humans perceive their environment and vice versa? Is that a good capture? Yeah, excellent. So how is this going to work? Peter's going to get the conversation started, but you're meant to participate. That's why there's no cord on this thing, is because I'm going to be able to hand this or another one to you. So if you want to join in the conversation, just raise your hand. We'll pass you a mic. Questions, comments, whatever comes to mind. So feel free to chime in. If you're shy, but you feel like you have something to say, you don't want to say it into a microphone, we have index cards over here in pens, so you can write it down, hand me the card, and I can be you and say it loudly and clearly into the conversation if you like. So that's also for folks there. And then Nishay Deveneaux here. Hi, Nishay.
Hi.
She's the IRiS postdoctoral fellow, has been with us almost 2 weeks now. She has training in interdisciplinary psychedelic studies, really cool stuff. She'll be coordinating our December event on hallucinations and the nature of perception. She is helping us to connect with our online audience. So we are live streaming on Twitter and YouTube. Yeah. Hi, the internet. And the internet can talk to us too. So we have a way of receiving comments and questions. So if the events sell out in the future and you can't make it in person, you can join us online and you can actually interact with the conversation there. So Nishay's going to be helping us to see if there are questions or comments that come in from our online audience. Did I cover everything? All right. I'm going to hand it off to Peter. So thanks everybody for coming. And yeah, please join us in this conversation.
Great. All right, thanks, Nate. So this, we've been, as Nate mentioned, the leadership group of IRiS has been meeting together for a couple of years now, but this is really our first public event. And we figured it would be sort of a good idea to start where we started with things. In the first time we really got together for a kind of retreat together, we'd all been, we addressed the question that I'm going to raise today for us to discuss, which is just the question, what is sensing? You know, we had gotten together, because we all, we were talking to each other. Are you interested in sensing? No, I'm interested in sensing. Okay, oh, you have interest in sensing as well? Okay, great. And, we put out feelers around the university. Who else is interested in sensing? And lots of people come, oh yeah, we got interest in sensing. And then it occurred to us, okay, well, maybe let's have a little conversation about what it is to be a sensor, and what things are sensors and what things are not sensors. We've all been working with some ideas about what they are that brought us together, but we threw this out in our first retreat and had a fun time discussing it. So we thought we'd see what happens with the same question with this interesting group of folks. So hope you'll join us in thinking about it, and not thinking about what sensors are, but as we go along, maybe what does it matter what we decide to call it? What hangs on the question of what is a sensor, and what people's thoughts are about that as well. So my way of sort of kicking off discussion is to play the game that I presented to our group itself called Is It a Sensor? Okay? And the first item I put forward for you to consider, and we can get a show of hands, I think, from everyone, but especially our panelists. This means yes, this means no, this means Okay, how about the human eye? The human eye is sensor. All right, take note of the flexible thinker, Tony Chemero, who does not find it and will be interested Tony, do you, let me throw a couple out
I
there.
did some research on Wikipedia about what it says.
Rule 1 from third grade research is we do not check Wikipedia. But that's the
what-
one. You can look anywhere else on the internet if you're in elementary school.
That's what
Do
we
not look
philosophers
at
look at Wikipedia.
Why? But you know. Okay, is that your only reason for not including the I? Is that as a sentence? Okay. All right. There's more to the story. Tony will come to. How about a thermometer? An old-fashioned thermometer with the mercury in it. Oh. Okay, I see. Anyone want to come? Joori, I see you didn't raise your hand for that one.
So when I received the email about what is sensor, I started to think about what is sensing and then a sensor. So first thought about sensing itself, and sensing itself is the first step of the communication to me. The communication is there, but without sensing, communication cannot happen because you cannot really gather information and understand. So it's the first step, but when it comes to sensor, I was able to think about several components, and I decided to say that something is not a sensor. So according to my definition, maybe it's wrong, so it should consist of detector.
Okay.
So a thermometer and measuring cup, those are detectors.
Okay.
So detectors are the ones that you recognize something. Okay? And data. There should be a data. Information gathered through the detector. And communication network that delivers the message. And then lastly, algorithm, but it's debatable whether we can include algorithm as part of the sensor or not. But even if it's not included, I think that it is very close to the sensor. So the algorithm is a design or a way that it decides whether what kind of action, what kind of thing will happen or when it should happen. So
Let's stick with our simple case first,
Right.
so before we get ahead of ourselves.
Based on my category, we want that to understand.
So you have the eye as a sensor, but not the thermometer.
Right.
The thermometer you were pointing out detects things,
Yeah.
but detecting things, and it has a readout showing the amount that was detected. But that's not yet enough to be a sensor for you. Is that? Does anyone have thoughts on who did want to hold the thermometer as a sensor? Does it? Yeah. Thoughts on?
I'm kind of on the.
Oh yeah, you're not sure about the thermometer.
I do agree that it has to detect something, but I think it does. It reacts to the change in the environment. So it does detect something in some way, and there is a reading, there's a scale attached to it. Mercury says something about it. So in that sense, it reacts always the same way. But then there's the program like, yeah, but then you need another intelligence to make sense of it.
Okay.
So they sense that a child, in my case, a grandchild, has a fever. You put your hand to her head and you say, oh, and then you take the temperature. So I think it's, it's not always as accurate, but if you felt enough what a warm head is from a feverish head, you can tell that. But because I also look things up. I couldn't come here with
Oh,
that.
I think you're gonna Google it.
No, I didn't Google anything. I just was, because I looked in the dictionaries, several of them, because this is what I do in my non-existent spare time. I'm a word person, so I like dictionaries, no, seriously. But that's what I sensing. I sense Amalia has a fever, so let's take her temperature. And so I can see that though. I mean, it's kind of, it's just, I still think you can sense it, how do you know to raise your heat? Well, look, it's 66 in the room, is it chilly? You're gonna, so there is a way in which it senses things, like you said.
Does anyone think that the mercury thermometer is not a sensor, but maybe an electrical thermometer is a sensor? Okay.
I think
Audience on this, or or were we?
So,
Yeah.
can I put
Please.
an idea forward of different orders of sensing? So, sensation is bringing information qualities of the external world into conscious awareness, or at least awareness of in some form that can be accessible consciously. The body has structures that do that directly into the brain. But then there are secondary sensors that you can use to extend the natural sensor. So an eye to me is a sensor for the mind. And the thermometer is a secondary sensor that the eye uses to gauge temperature. And so in that case, to me, there's no difference between what the transduction mechanism of temperature in the secondary sensor is, whether it's mercury, whether it's whatever it is whatever it is that the electronic thermometer is. Those are secondary sensors that then go through the sensor of the eye that then bring into conscious awareness of temperature in some location.
If you don't mind me for jumping in the philosophical deep end here with you, is there no sensing in the world without consciousness?
So then we have to talk about what consciousness is.
Okay, I had in mind the plant. I had in mind a world of plants turning.
Yeah, sure. So then we can go into whether that's a form of consciousness.
I don't think of the plants as conscious.
I would agree with you. And yet I think that they do sense, and I still think that different orders of sensation is a useful way to think of it, but now I have to incorporate the mindset. Maybe someone else can do that.
I actually agree with secondary sensors and the first global sensory faculty. So we have sensory faculty here, sitting here. I actually love this place. There are a lot of sensory stimuli, and it's some of them I recognize and some of them I ignore. We go out and sense everything. So there's a cognitive aspect coming into play. But anyway, so there is a sensory faculty, and that's the first group. And there's a secondary sensors.
There are a good number of people who know a lot about brains here. I wanted to ask whether a neuron is a sensor.
So there are sensory neurons that transduce events in the environment into other nervous systems that are sent to, we call those sensors. But neurons have to generally work for a bunch of different types of sensors.
Well, any neuron that gets enough input senses the neurotransmitter comes from a back to it.
I mean, by that virtue, every signal transduction cascade in a cell is a sensor.
You know, sensors are just all over.
No, that was fine.
Okay, next up, the ocean tides. This sense the location of the moon. Could they? Oh, thank you. We gotta, yeah, let's get a show of hands. Ocean tides as a sensor. All right. A lot of people. Okay, yeah, let's hear from folks who want to make the argument for the tides.
I have not thought about my answer to this question, so that was off the top. But I think it's one person. But I think I'm going to ignore that question and just say that I think there's kind of two arguments going on. One about what sensing is, and in my opinion, something that's different what sensing is. I think people are talking, so for example, I would consider the thermometer or even the weight under some perspectives to be a sensor because it is changing in relation to something. I don't think it always has to be a regular change because, for example, we know from perception and otherwise or plasticity in neurons that sensing might change in my opinion, but the making of sense from that I think is something different. Like I think the thermometer senses, I also make sense of the thermometer. But I think there's a relation between, in my opinion, I think it's a receiver and something. I wouldn't say that the thermometer is sensitive to temperature, but maybe that is something in regards to it, but I wouldn't say that it's sensitive. That's
Okay. There was another vote for the tides. You want to add anything?
I was just going to say, it wasn't about tides.
Oh, okay.
We have my element here
No, go for it.
in the scientific world, but
Yeah.
I would just say that from my point of view, everything has the capacity to sense. Even the chairs that you're sitting on are sensing the body sitting in because they're comprised of atoms. And every atom is capable of responding to its environment. Therefore, in my opinion, everything is from a philosophical standpoint has the capacity to sense.
Okay. I mean, I think you point to something where we're kind of coming and where, yeah, we could point to this question of like, it could be a sensor in certain, it's responding, things are responding in certain ways to, causal input on it, and it's recording the effects of that cause, in some sense carrying information about what has happened to it. To throw in, I think when we were talking about this case of the tides, I think, and I remember Nate and others suggesting, well, maybe the tides just by themselves were not as sensors, but someone who cared a lot about the location of the moon could, by considering the tides in a certain way and consistently looking to them for information about the moon, through that act, now it is a sensor. It wasn't before. Before it was just stuff happening, but someone is still approaching it with a purpose, and through having that purpose, was able to exploit its behaviors, and in that sort of combination, it became
That's
sensor.
very much aligned with what Paul just said about sense making.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
I can get on board with this.
You can go for it. So, all right, let's try an almanac. Well, yeah, we're not getting hands up. What's the problem with the? What is the problem with the almanac? That no one wants to call it a sensor.
It does not transform anything.
It's got a lot of information about things.
Yeah, but it doesn't do anything. There's nothing happening.
doesn't respond to anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't respond.
The physical environment in which it sits, as a book, it might respond, say, 3 minutes instead of as an almanac, but as a book that might age and turn yellow.
But then the question would just be, it's like that. Then it would just be, what is an age instead of is it an almanac? Then you're kind of answering the question that what is a book or what is a page, what is a paper, not what is an almanac.
It's a humidity sensor, but all that stuff about rain, the level of rain in Santa Fe and stuff, it's not sensing that.
Now I have to come up with something that's special about an almanac that responds to it. Almanacs usually have like pages of flags, right? So through time the colors might fade in a way that
But it's not even used in the same way of what we've discussed before, right? Like you could use the pages to see, to assess the humidity of the air because they react in a certain way, maybe. But in itself, it doesn't do anything to give you information about the environment. It gives you higher level information about what might happen if you're able to read. Right? I don't know. I think.
Can you separate the function of the almanac from what is happening to it when it's standing in the community? Because then the language at one point cannot be directly where the function.
Sorry, I only understood half of it.
I said it is an almanac, sending it to the environment. At one point, we must be able to read it in the environment. This means the function as an almanac is not in competition. This happens to any group, really, but still, the almanac is there to provide information. So I would agree, I think it's wrong.
Well, I was thinking of the almanac, at least, you guys are completely right, there's different ways to think of how it might be a sensor. I was thinking of just like, does it sense all these levels, the amount of rain in all these different cities just by listing it? And tomorrow was sort of like, it's not doing anything in the right way. So with that in mind, let's get everyone's vote on binoculars. Are binoculars a sensor, and able to sense things across the room more easily? No one's going for binoculars. A microscope?
Yeah, I
Okay, all right. Microscope?
no, I did it first even with the binoculars.
Okay, sorry, I'm missing one. Well, let's hear.
But I'm not. It just because I mean, it's it extends the ability for you to look at birds for one, right? Or look at the ships in the ocean, or some stars. I mean, they're not the binoculars would be good for stars. Or if you're up in the rows of a stadium, the players down on the field. I mean, there is something about the extension of seeing. I mean, for me, sensing and sensors are all about the senses, and in the disciplines that I know best, this is how some of the questions that you're all asking get have been like worked out. Like you really have to get a hold of, where's his name? Erica Gaster, my colleague, who's writing about sensing in the 18th century. I mean, because she's written about witchcraft and seances and the like. I mean, I'm writing for her now for a grant. So I thought, oh my goodness, she should be here tonight instead of me. But no, her work is really good. And the history of emotions, which looks at sort of psychology and cognitive psychology as well as philosophy, at least in the historical discipline the last 15 years, I would say. So that's when I thought, the binoculars, but I was having this debate with my son, and he said, I don't think the binoculars are a sensor, so I'll tell him. So anyway, I thought they were because of the extension of the ability to see certain things.
It helps you get a better perception of what's out there than you would have without it.
Right.
It responds in real time to things in the world, what's there, unlike the almanac, at least unless it's a humidity detector.
But in this case, I would make the argument that you're just amplifying the sensory signal that you're getting and that you're receiving with your sensor, which is the eye.
Eyes, right.
Sensors.
I would disagree.
Yeah, I would say no.
But your eye is a sensor.
Yeah.
Right.
But what if you can't see without your glasses?
That's why you amplify the signal.
Ah, okay.
are an accessory to these sensors. I could be wrong, but I'm.
Let's go back to what Joori said, like her kind of typology of things to do with sensing. And one of the crucial things that she points to is like the information gets sent to an algorithm, right? And that's the reason why I would say eyes aren't sensing, because, I think algorithms are not a good way to understand your brain or your thinking or anything like that. Right? So that's why I keep not raising my hand when everyone else does. Okay. But I think, and that what she said reflects what's, what my Wikipedia research on what the word sensor is defined as. It's related to electronics typically, right? So,
well, yeah. Well, again, that was Wikipedia.
Actually, I don't see that. I mean, if you look at the physiology of an eye, then it is not actually, it also works like binoculars, right? It's lenses.
That's what I was going to say. What is the eye doing that the binoculars is not doing?
So, listening to all the perspectives, it's really fascinating. In my mind, it's creating like a spectrum of sensor spectrum. So, to a certain point, some people agree that it is a sensor. From my perspective, it should be increased to a certain point, but it's really different. So it's really fascinating to see different perspectives. So still, I feel that there is a detector and data and the communication stream and the algorithm. Distinction of the algorithm is so critical because it's the decision-making process. As you go further down to the detector, it doesn't really have any ability to make decisions, what to collect, what to keep, and how you react. So it was very helpful discussion for me to create this kind of a spectrum in my mind, which I didn't have before. So thank you.
Let's raise you're mentioning algorithms. How about when you start to type something in the Google search field and it guesses what you were about to type? Okay, it's electronic, it's an algorithm. Is it sensing your desires to search? Is that
It's habit more than desires, I would say.
I mean,
never say
granted, it's
desire.
noisy. It's not imprecise. It's imprecise. It often guesses wrong, but there can be sensors that are not very precise or accurate. And you can imagine them getting much more accurate in the future. The more you're willing to share with them, right? Probably can get pretty good at guessing what you're about to type.
Right.
Okay, Tony's hand's gone up.
I mean, again, given what I've decided I'm going to say is a sensor for today, that fits, right? It kind of detects your activities, and then it passes information on to an algorithm which responds in a particular way to it. Pass it through other electronics. I mean, that's again what Merriam-Webster and Wikipedia told me, and that's what I'm going to go with. But so I think that is sensing what you're doing in this kind of technical use of the word sensing.
I'd be curious to hear from the audience if people have thoughts on this kind of case, because if you're wondering at all, okay, this little quasi-philosophical discussion about sensors is all very interesting, but what does it matter at the end of the day what we call a sensor? One place that seems to come up for me is, are we comfortable? On one hand, we might be comfortable giving information out. It might help them suggest something useful to us. Less comfortable with the idea that our minds are being sensed.
I don't think that it's our minds being sensed when we are typing into the Google search bar. I think it is making a prediction, not necessarily a sensation, but a prediction based on your either previous patterns of searching or the general world public's previous patterns. If everyone's searching a similar topic and you start to use the same words, it's going to predict what you are about to put. But I don't think that is necessarily sensing what you are thinking.
Yes, I would have to agree. So when we think about technology, these algorithms, like laptops, computers, and things like that, as you mentioned, I personally would say it's sensing more of like algorithms that have been pre-programmed with all this data that has been collected from all these people. So as you said, you're typing in Bing, Google, or Yahoo. It's not, I would not say it's necessarily sensing, but it's kind of running this algorithm to, as he said, or they said, I'm sorry, to kind of predict or kind of guess what it is you're typing. After we've all been able to type in something and we don't finish, and there are a whole bunch of options that pop up. That's again that pre-programmed data that's been put into these algorithms. So I would say it's more of like kind of on the lines of just, I wouldn't need to say prediction, but kind of straddles the fence of that a little bit when we talk about algorithms and AI within machines.
Do people view the search field suggestions differently than the face recognition algorithms? So that might scan all your pictures and pick out all the ones just of you. Do you feel comfortable saying that that might sense your face? Is anyone, okay, so Tony, are people shying away from calling that sensing? Got a hand up. Oh, we got Ryan. Yeah, let's hear from Ryan.
I would say that's more on the lines of sensing because you have this face recognition, I guess technology algorithms that are sensing for like specific features of one's face or specific like markings, and they're putting together whatever this recognition is to identify you as a person. So I would say that's more on the lines of sensing because it's now looking for something that's very specific. And again, we already have this, as we're all very, I'm sure very tech savvy, all the information that we put out there. So it would be rather easy to say, oh, okay, I recognize this is Dominique, but recognizes this is Dominique. I can sense something and then kind of put that picture together.
So how would you suggest this is different from sensing and detecting features of words? Because I mean, I'm not decided on this either yet, right? It's a messy thing. But while listening to your argument, which I think is well made, I was wondering. It's like I was not sold on the idea that the search engine is a sensor, and intuitively I would have said, reacted to face recognition is a sensor. But really, the algorithm behind it does the same thing. It searches for features, either in words or in faces and pixels and coloring, and then it mines the information that it has, and it combines it in some way, and then it makes sense of it. So I'm torn.
I guess, I'm wondering if more of the unfinished thought, if this is a question of whether or not this is a result based on something that we don't have direct relation to at the moment, like databases are written with pattern recognition, and all pattern recognition is sensing, and that's fine, but is there a difference between pattern recognition based on a database or something like that? We're talking against what you would say for a search algorithm versus pattern recognition in the sense of based on what you're doing right now, this is what I think that you're about to do, and I'm not really sure where to draw the line on that, but that's kind of what I'm coming out of.
I think I decouple the algorithm from the sensor. So facial recognition requires a sensor. I think the transformation requires it's a transformation of that image that spoke out into the sensor, converted to some electrical signal. The algorithm is what you do with that information is decoupled, and I think you have to transform that physical information into something that can be interpreted or sensed.
Totally raise my hand, but I'm going to say something along the same line, more or less. I guess a sensor, in my mind, the more I think about it, is something which converts a signal into a medium which the algorithm can act upon. And so I guess that answers a bunch of the artificial computer sensing stuff. Yeah, I think that it's sensing because it's taking some information which the algorithm is not able to act upon, converting it, and then allowing a decision to be made. That's what all our sensors do. It takes some sort of signal, whether it be sound or sight or whatever, and converts it into electricity so that our brain can chug away at deciding what it's supposed to do with that. So I guess at the most fundamental level, it does decouple the algorithm from the sensor, but they're inextricably linked because the sensor has to be configured in such a way that it can feed into the algorithm.
Yeah, I still stand by the idea that it has to do something with transformation. Like something is transformed into something else.
Tamara had a very interesting idea that there's got to be a change of energy type.
Yeah.
A transformation of energy type. Now, I don't know all the types of energy myself. I'm just.
I'm not even sure
What are
the right word for this, but
Transduction is probably the word.
yeah, transduction.
Transduction. So, yeah, give us a little on that and why you would think that would, what work that does when we're trying to answer these questions.
Well, the general idea is that the signal is conveyed in some mode or in some energy way, like heat or, now that I think about it, really everything is some kind of waveform. It's swinging in some way, in some frequency. So it's really a translation of this frequency of one medium to the frequency of in another medium.
I also think maybe it depends on contextualizing it within what the sensor should be embedded in. So like, I think anything could be a sensor is providing information to something or providing information to the system perhaps. But maybe something like banana peel might not be a sensor, but there's a banana peel on the floor and it might sense the danger. Like it might provide information that there's danger. And so that might be somebody that's smarter than the sensor providing information that's in context. So I think that there's some room to play around with like the boundaries if you are familiar with your context, but
I think this brings up an important point that keeps coming up, which is whether or not intelligence or algorithms can impute a sensing function to something that otherwise doesn't have it. Right? The waves are just what happens when the moon's gravity pull and the sun's gravity pull on the water on the earth. But if you then have a sense-making connection to somebody studying them, then suddenly it can turn it. So I think there's this ability to impute a sensing function to something that might otherwise not be a sensor.
Yeah, that's.
Yes, I can shout. I'm from the Balkans, so you speak. Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to, the thought that was coming to my mind is if we have a definition of sensor as something that translates different input from outside into something else, that something else has to have meaning. So we have to have something to give meaning to that, translated, whatever it is. That's why I think Mercury is a sensor, because it translates the heat into a number that tells me something about body temperature as well as the algorithm. That once I input the meaning on how to discover black faces or white faces, can understand or sense better facial recognition. So the part of the meaning in understanding sensor is something that coming from outside is something that should, in my role, be taken into consideration.
Maybe related to that question for Tony, which is, this is me not knowing. I don't know if it counts as an algorithm, and I kind of, hearing your response, I was thinking, I think Tony should think of a mercury thermometer as sensor because in a sense, right, it has a specific equation relationship between the heat and what it's going to do within a certain space, how much your body, that's why thermometers work, put them within a certain space and put the markers are in place, and then you have output that is consistent and I would say algorithmic, but I don't know what that means because I don't do computers, so I don't know if it's restricted to that setting.
Any movable, Tony?
I guess I just don't have, I mean, again, I just had to figure out what I mean by the word sensor for today, which I didn't have a strong opinion about before, I have to admit. So, you know, before I looked online for a definition, I would have been happy to say that a thermometer was a sensor. A mercury thermometer was a sensor. But then I said, well, I'm going to have some criteria by which I answer Peter's weird questions. So I just chose one and I'm trying to stick with it, which means I have to say no. Well, so, you know, I don't want this to be about my weird beliefs, but I think that the idea of an algorithm is essentially useless when talking about a biological system.
But are you afraid that if you call the mercury thermometer a sensor, that everything is going to become a sensor? Is that what's lying behind this clinging to Wikipedia and what it told you in the first 5 seconds of your research on it?
It took at least 3 minutes. No, but I mean, it put it entirely, it said in the most general sense and put it in the context of electronics, right? So I figured that's how I decided I was going to answer all the questions tonight. If it had said something about, you know, transduction of information in nervous systems, I would have answered the questions differently. But it just, you know, we don't want to argue about what a word means, right? That's not very fun. So the question has to be something more substantive, and I don't know. So I decided to pick a definition and stick with it. So if you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably have a different understanding.
Gotcha.
I agree with Tony. Well, the distinctive function of algorithm, making it distinct from the sensor, is very meaningful to me because it is the part that we have to recognize in developing sensors. Because without recognizing the function of algorithm part, it may go in a direction that is maybe it's solving the current problem, but in the long, if you look back after 100 years, maybe you make a mistake. So what that means is a lot of people develop high-end technology and use it in a way that it can solve immediate problems. And I have seen that it's becoming a problem. One example that I can make is when I was driving from home to here, I missed the exit. And my GPS device, the app, immediately told me where to go. By doing so, I'm losing the opportunity that I can exercise the sense of navigation. I don't even think about where the landmarks are. I just follow the direction. Because there is an algorithmic component, maybe attached to the sensor, well, it's debatable again, maybe not, but understanding the distinct function of algorithm is very critical. I think it's very ethical matter that we all have to be aware of. And using just 1 hour, I think it'll be a worthwhile matter that we can discuss. I very much agree with that, but that reminded me that kind of shows a distinction that I can make for my interpretation of what sensing is, which is, I think I would say that it is sticking with the transduction, right? It is transforming one sizable entity into something else. So it, like with a thermometer, it would transduce the heat in the room into an elongation of a material. And so this is then something that an algorithm can use, or a scale can use. So it is something that provides a new mode of information that is measurable in a different way, or can be, carries information in a different way, so that then an algorithm or a scale or an interpretation of some sort can come in and make use of this information.
Yeah.
But I think the sensing itself, for me, is this making available of information in a different form.
It totally makes sense. When you think about the eyes, it's receiving only the light, and the light turns into electric impulses.
Exactly.
And the optic nerve transfer, deliver that message to the brain. So I think it's totally right to say that there's a certain form of information and it's transferring into another form to the liver.
What happens if you don't use the GPS and you learn how to get about a city, or you look at a map and you have what we used to call a good sense of direction, right? I mean, I think this is the thing that's the most annoying. If you're in a city anywhere in the world that you love, and the tourists are just looking at their phone trying to figure out where you go. So, I mean, what do we call the phone a sensor? The GPS is a sensor? I mean, it's like our sense of direction. What about that? So what do you think of that? Because what does that mean to have a good sense of direction? So I have a question. Do we consider the brain to process information, do we consider the brain something that uses algorithm or an algorithmic thing?
Some people do, some people don't.
It's a dangerous question to ask.
So, I feel like as I'm sitting here thinking, I feel like for some reason that makes a difference to me. If we consider the brain to be algorithmic, then I think we're arguing a moot point almost. Because if the brain's processes are algorithmic and so are electronics, then I don't really see the difference between how the brain processes something versus how electronics process something. But and I'm not a scientist, I'm just Tamara's neighbor. But I have had several conversations with Tamara about similar things. But to me that makes a difference. If the brain is algorithmic or not seems to make a difference. And I think that may be kind of what you were kind of saying as well. If I remember your question correctly. Yeah.
So some of the artificial neural networks that are used to in facial recognition technologies and things like that are said to be modeled on the kinds of connections that hold among populations of neurons. And so, people do make that analogy really strongly and say, not just are they both doing algorithms, but they're doing them in very formally similar ways. And that's kind of how they came up with the idea of artificial neural networks. Now, there are movements in cognitive science to say, no, that's not the right way to think about what's going on in the brain, and you guys feel free to speak to that, but you're certainly right that I agree with Tamara's neighbor
but not tomorrow.
that certainly things do seem to clarify if we are comfortable thinking about artificial neural networks and actual neural networks working in much the same way.
Peter, you're saying that phenomena can be modeled in effect. That not only is the modeling of it an algorithm, but what you model also is an algorithm.
Well, they could both, the model and the thing modeled could both be algorithms.
Model a hurricane. I've been sitting here wondering how a hurricane is a sensor anyway, but you can model a hurricane based on various natural processes. Does that therefore suggest that the hurricane itself, the way that
I would say no. I guess I was thinking, you know, if we started with the idea that activations of certain kinds of patterns of activation in neural networks are computing algorithms of the kind, if you just took that as a starting point, then if we could say, well, how do these algorithms work? Well, let's formally replicate that in a computer. Then you've got, and then, you know, that to me, then the analogy would be, okay, we've got this big hurricane. Let's, in a sort of little terrarium, get some wind and water things in a small scale, you know, so it's almost like kind model. I guess that's what I thought of it, you know, but yeah.
I think I'm going to refer back to your question and saying, like, do you think the brain is the algorithm? I would say so. I would consider that specifically in the biological aspect when we think about, for example, looking at signs, right? So I look at some form sensors looking at signs, and then our brain using its biological algorithm to ascertain what we're looking at, kind of process like things like that. I would say that it's personal algorithm. I would even go further to say, like, even to the body totally algorithmic. Now you mentioned, you know, not really seeing the difference, and I can kind of see that a little bit to a certain extent when it comes to like machine learning and AI. I deal a little bit with machine learning myself, so I would say certainly with no examples of learning from brain aspect, of course, but again, you know, I think Peter mentioned it earlier, there are just some things still that we don't know, we never really worked, or we have worked, but have not found an answer to kind of transform from biological aspects or artificial aspects. I'm not going to talk about the brain at all. Because I don't really know how. Thank you to my department. But I will say that I wonder if, I keep putting back to this prediction versus implementation idea, and I wonder if we're thinking in terms of something being able to predict an outcome. Is that sensing or is that just a good guess versus something that's just amplifying the relationship that's already present and consistent? I think, I don't know, and I don't know if it's a distinction that I can really explain in another way, but I just keep thinking like, yes, we have things like algorithms that can guess for us based on given what we might think, but in my mind, a sensor is more likely something that reveals a relationship that's consistent to the granularity that is necessary for it to be used for something else. So again, it's not necessarily about the practice of the accuracy of the information isn't the hard of it. It's more about if the relationship is consistent and if there's, well, also like since they can be separate, but I also have to think about it in terms of who's using the information and that kind of
So where I kind of come from, I appreciate both of the ladies' contexts because I've kind of bought into this. But I think the piece that struck me with this is, again, where we all started this conversation from, and humans view everything as if they are the center. And it's always about what we see it. And so as we kind of have gone through this about pieces, the detectors, and I appreciate it, I can't remember anyone's name, but the DAA professor's context, that there are pieces that are used and so forth. And I'm happiest used, I think it was Maura's, that was transfiguration of energy or something like that. I think that's almost the best term I can come up with, because where it struck me with this is, so we said what humans do, and that's what we know we do, whatever the biological sequence is. We talk about machines, and we're using the word algorithm, and we argue whether the biological solution and the machine solution are the same. But one of the things that struck me is, what about the other living things that don't have brains, but they sense? Plants sense, cells seemingly sense, because how do they exist? How do they, how does the plant, what does the plant do when it reacts when it knows there's no rain? What does it do when there's a fungus? What does it, you can't say it's a brain necessarily. You can't say it's a machine, but somehow that collection of cells has realized that through pattern and genetic and growth and evolution to process something and adapt, typically to survive. And sensing for most of us has been here so that the living entity survives. And so I've been love this conversation, but I've been using these two ladies very much to kind of get my mind more open than I thought I'd be.
Yeah. I think what you said kind of raised a connection to the point that was being made about, you only have a sensor given someone's purpose of using it to get the information. So there has to be this purpose involved, and maybe if I made it my purpose to judge the moon by the tides, then the tides are a sensor. But you raise these cases of like, what about the cell? And or the little paramecium that's like detecting things, and we want to call it sensing. Another place it can get its purposes from from its evolutionary history. And so sometimes people talk about the purpose of, it's, the aspect of it that allows it to detect things is that it comes from the fact that it's doing that enabled it to survive and thrive in its environment. And so we can say for that reason it has the purpose of detecting these things, even though there's not perhaps an intelligent being who decided to treat it as a sensor. So it's just like another way of bringing things into the realm of the sensors.
Yeah, so one of the things I think I think this has just come up, this idea that we need to think about our categories, right? We don't want to just think about humans and machines, maybe we're thinking about other things. I think, and here's where I need to say I'm an anthropologist and an archaeologist, so coming at it from that perspective, we can't have humans as one bucket, right? That doesn't work at all. And I know we're not looking for consensus here, so we're already entertaining lots of perspectives, but I mean, if we look at people across time and space, we have radically different models of how the world works and understanding people's relationships with other things. I work in the Maya area, and so there, we are not thinking about humans being centered in terms of their relationship with what we might consider to be inanimate materials, right? So really different model of how humans and other materials interact. And when Tamara was giving us this sort of throwing out this possible idea of translation of energy, right, which I thought was sort of playing with that with different examples from my kind of academic world. I thought, for the Maya, the great example of that is dreaming, right? That one of the ways you interact with the world is that your ancestors give you dreams, and you do that by putting yourself in proximity to the remains of the ancestors, so you sleep in places near where your ancestors' remains are located, and they will then translate their knowledge and memory and energy into the dreams that give you kind of material direction in what to do. Which is like wildly different than what we're talking about, but it makes me think some of those characterizations could be really useful to us looking not just from our kind of modern Western scientific perspective, but maybe we have to stay very open to how that manifests.
Thank you. I do have a question from online that I just wanted to get out there. Is the Earth traveling around the sun a sensor? Or could it be? What would it take for it to be a sensor?
Well, he would say yes.
Okay. What's it sensing? Gravity.
Rock, to me, a rock is, if we all put our hand on the floor right now, like we are interpreting, we are doing the sensing, which is adding the intelligence.
Yeah.
But if you back out the intelligence, the floor is a sensor. Because it is taking on it's being affected by its environment. A rock outside is being affected by the sun, by the cold, changes in temperature. It doesn't know that. But animals know that, as well as humans. So we're doing something.
Well, now that we've panned out to the very Earth going around the sun, maybe this is a good place to pull the conversation in. I think we've done our time. I've certainly enjoyed talking with you all about it, and I think my thoughts are more complex, if not clearer, for having done it. So thank you to everybody. Thanks to our panelists. And thanks to
Thanks to our audience. You guys are great tonight. So the next one will be November 18th at the Lunken Airport Terminal. It will be on biomimicry and the future of sensing. And then we have one December 9th at the Swing House that will be on hallucinations and the nature of perception. So stay tuned, put that stuff on your calendar, make sure to reach out to me. You can reach us at sensingresearch@uc.edu. That's easy enough for you to remember. You just send us an email, we'll put you on the mailing list if you're not already on it. But yeah, thanks again for joining us. This was really fun.
And spread the word.
Yeah, spread the word, bring friends, etc. We're going to